Hi everyone, it's Martin from Garden Gnome Support. Joining me today will be Karen. Karen will pop in at the end with the Q&As. And speaking of which, as always, a bit of housekeeping is when you're looking at the screen at the moment, you'll see there's a Q&A tab. The red arrow is pointing to it. If you've got any questions, please ask during the webinar. As we approach the end of the webinar, we'll stop taking questions, obviously, because there's a bit of a delay going on. And we don't want to get into the situation of, as we try and wrap this up, another question comes in. All right, on the topic of Q&As and questions, if we can stay on topic, because as you know by now, we record all the webinars, so it'd be nice to have all the questions which are going to be relative to the webinar. Right, okay, so with that all done, one other thing I want you guys to give us a bit of feedback on is this yellow or this green circle on my mouse pointer. I'm not a big fan of this, but then I've had people tell me that it's great because they can see where my mouse is. So if you guys can, put some comments in whether you like it or you don't like it. I've got the keyboard display that as I tap keys, you can see that in the top of the screen. So yeah, if you can just give us some feedback. But my main one is this green around the cursor. I'm not a big fan, but if it helps you guys out, I'm happy to keep it. Right, okay, so with all that said, let's dive in then. This is part 2 of variables and logic blocks. This is the project where we got to it from last week. So let's just open it up. So let's open up the project. Here it is. And let's have a look at the output to see how far we got. Now, what we did with this is we built a funky animated point hotspot. We could turn on an image, and when we rotated to a certain point, the image showed, and we then could show a different image in a different node. And then we also had this back button. Now, one of the questions we had afterwards is with the back button, let's go back to the skin, you'll see that we set up a bunch of numbered variables to capture the pan tilt field of view. So when we went back, we used the variables as a temporary storage area to record the pan tilt of field of view before we change nodes. So when we come back, we could read it here. Now the question was, could we have replaced this with one variable? And the answer at the time, to be honest, my brain was a little bit fuzzy, but yes, you could. And what I'd like to do is address that in this webinar to show, well, yeah, I wanted to show variables and logic blocks. So what we will be doing is showing how to condense all of this down into one variable. Okay, but before we start, what I want to do is just carry on. And that is, on our back button, you'll notice that let's go back to the output. And this actually does work. So if I set my hotspot in the top right hand corner, change nodes, and then set a hotspot the bottom right hand corner, as we use the back button, it registers the pan tilt field of view and puts us back. And if I now click it again, it will put us back with the hotspot in the bottom of there. So that's working fine. But there's not a lot happening when we hover over the back button. Now, I sort of ran out of time last week. As always, there's always lots to talk about, and yeah, I can certainly talk. So what I want to do now is just go back to that back button and show you the bits that I didn't cover. And they're quite simple. What I wanted to do was just to add a mouse over effect on the back button. Now, again, this is all about variables and logic blocks, and the way I'm going to do this is use a logic block. I'm going to look under, with the text box selected, there we go. I'm going to look under the background color, and it's black. I'm going to select the logic block for this, and I'm just going to select the trigger that when the mouse over equals true, I'm just going to change its color to red. All right. Click OK. Right. So that's that. If we have a look at the preview, we should now see that on mouse over, we've got the red happening. All right, so that's quite a simple thing to do now. So, I mean, at this sort of stage of the game, I think you guys are probably understanding and very well what the logic blocks are doing, whatever attribute an element has, because obviously most elements have an appearance, a rectangle, because they'll have a border or a background or something. As long as it's got the logic block symbol, we can affect it. So I'm going to use this on the text, because the text says back, and when I click the logic block for this, I can now do another mouse over. When that equals true, I can we can actually change the text. So I change that to last node, so that's last node visited. All right, so that's what I'm going to change that to. So let's just save this, generate the output again. I do this often enough, so you guys are probably following, but if I just hit the key combination, do I want to generate the output? Yes, I do. I'm actually on the Mac, so if you guys are on the PC, whenever you see a command, this one, you would use your control, and when you see this one, that's actually the Alt key. All right, so it's on the older Mac keyboards, it's the Alt key, it's the Option and this funny symbol on the newer Macs. All right, but that's the so whenever you see these on the screen, if you're on the PC, that's the Alt, and that one, when I'm pressing that on the PC, you would be pressing that one. All right, okay, cool. All right, so with that all done, then, as you can see, when I hover over, very, very simply, I've given this back button some, really good tactile feedback, if you like, for the viewer. So when we hover over it, it turns red, tells the viewer that it's got interaction, and we can change the text. So that's quite a nice little way of finishing that off. All right. Now, we said about changing the logic blocks for this, because when we hit the back button, so let's select it, you may remember that on this action, all right, what we did was says mouse click, open next panorama, and we selected the back. Let's get rid of this actually. So the last node visited, and we had to use the expert mode to put in the placeholders for the variable. Okay, so let's just leave that as is, because what I'm going to do now is just get rid of all of those actions. I'm going to go to the skin. I'm just going to delete, rather than modifying anything, I'm just going to delete everything and start again. So basically, how I want to do this is I need to know my current pan tilt field of view, and we're going to register that to the variable. So I'm going to have another variable, and I'm going to call this underscore view. That would make sense. And I'm going to change this. It has to be changed to a text variable. All right. Now, the reason for that is that I want to add some forward slashes. Again, we covered that last week. I will say it again this week. Is that when we are adding a target view, we actually add them as 3 separate values divided by a forward slash. Now I'm going to want, as I'm going to use this as a single variable, I want all of that information, including the forward slashes. Can't add forward slashes to a numbered variable, so we're now using a text variable to do that. Okay, so that's my variable set up. So it's var view, and it's a text variable. Okay, now on the back button, we had the action of before node changed, right? We're going to set a variable value, and the variable value is going to be, let's have a look at the image. It's going to be view, and I need to set the value there. Now, what I want to do is capture, as I say, the pan tilt field of view. Now, if you go to our website, you can find, let's just do it so you guys are with me on this. If we go to our website and just type it, oh, it's there, frequently visited, documentation, Pano2 VR, go down to references, and you will see a list of placeholders, and here they all are. All right, so the placeholder I'm actually looking for is the $AP, $AT for current tilt, and $AF for the current field of view. Now again, there is again, last week you would have seen me use a lot of text boxes as helpers to debug as I was going along, and we can do that again here today. Here is a text box, and what I'm going to say is, right, if I wanted to know what a particular placeholder is but I can't remember, rather than having to go to the website or even go to the help, Pano2VR's help, because you can get through to the documentation here, you can just click on this insert placeholder button and you can choose it from here. So under position you can see current pan, tilt, field of view. So what I need then is in this action, so let's get rid of that text box. I was going to use it, I won't, but under the button, sorry, I've got this set variable value before, so before node change, I want to set the variable value, so it's the current pan tilt field of view, and I want to save it into the variable name var view. So the way that's going to do, let's move the mouse out the way, is that the way that we express, if you like, a placeholder is always dollar open bracket, all right, and then it's the letters that we use. So in this case it's AP. I'm going to close the bracket, and then I'm going to add my /. All right, then I'm going to add the other placeholder, which is going to be dollar open bracket, AT for tilt, close it, /, and then I'm going to do dollar open bracket AF. The A stands for angle, by the way, so we've got dollar angle pan, dollar angle tilt, dollar angle field of view. So that's pan tilt field of view. And that is what I'm going to be writing into that variable. Now again, I can use my text box to prove that working. So let's grab a text box as my helper, just make it a little bit bigger. And what I'm going to do here is select, oh, let's just highlight that and get rid of that text. And I'm going to select the variable. When you create a variable, it will be listed here. So I'm going to select that. Here we go. So that's the variable. All right, I'm going to save. And when we export, you'll see that when I now change nodes, it places the pan tilt field of view before I node change. So from the first panorama before I change to this one. So that's all of that data now in one variable. Okay. So to add this to the back button, all right, all we do now is find the back button, go back to the open next panorama. I'm going to go to, I'm going to deselect expert mode actually. In fact, what I'm going to do is remove it completely and just show you this action. So I'm going to double click. So it's going to be mouse click, open next panorama. We are going to want last visited, all right, and then we are going to select the expert mode, and now I can put in the variable for, or not variable, the placeholder to access that variable. Now what is that going to be? Now you saw normal placeholders have a dollar, an open bracket, couple of digits or letters, and a close bracket. When we have a placeholder that's pointing to a variable, it has an asterisk. Now this is the reason why I put my helper text box here, because this is exactly what I've got to put in here, all right? Because the variable, when it saves itself, saves it with the pan value with the /, the tilt value with the /, and the field of view. So all I need to put in here now is the dollar open bracket, then the asterisk, and then the var underscore view and close bracket. So that now is going to take all of that information from the variable and put it into this action, and this action then is going to mouse click, open next panorama, and back, so the last panorama visited. So with that all done, we've now taken 3 variables and 3 actions and condensed them down to just the one. So again, to test that, I'm going to move the hotspot to the top right, change the node, move it to the bottom right, and when we hit the back button, we should toggle between those two. There you go. So that's using the text variable and and replacing 3 numbered variables. Okie dokie. Right, let's just grab a quick drink. Okay, right, everybody with me so far? Good. Right, so that's just adding to the back button, which is what I wanted to do. I'm going to get rid of this text box, this helper. Now, you're probably aware that I tend to like these text boxes to help me because it just gives you so much information. And sometimes when you can't remember a certain placeholder, then the text box just displays it for you. It makes the software gives you the information that you need to use, so it's even easier. Okay, so my next little trick then is to work on the point hotspot. Now, if I close the skin and save, I want to show you an issue that there was with the point hotspot. Again, didn't really get time to finish this properly, and the issue is that we gave the point hotspot a logic block that when we rolled over it, it changed color, so it changed to black. Brilliant. But there is a slight issue, and the issue is that the pulsating ring, as it's a child of the hotspot, when I roll over the ring, it will also change its color. So you end up with this double, it goes black and it flicks black before you put your cursor into the hotspot. Now, the reason for this and how we fix this is if we have a look at the hotspot. So here's the hotspot template, ht_node. If I expand it and see the child elements, you'll see that we got the hotspot image itself, and this is the ring. So what's actually happening is, because the ring is an active element, when I hover over it, any actions are bubbling up through this tree. All right, so what I need to do is select the hotspot ring, go down into the properties and select permeable. So in other words, it's now visible but not active. Another great use of permeable is if you have a company logo that you want to put somewhere, say top left or top right of the screen, or anywhere on the screen you wish. Any element that's in the skin, you'll find it's active. So if you clicked on it and dragged, you wouldn't drag the panorama behind it. But with permeable selected, the element itself is not an active element, so you can click and drag. Now, again, if you'd have followed me on the maps webinars, you would have seen at one point I would have made the background permeable. So the map was quite big. You could still click and drag the panorama through the map, but the map pins themselves were active elements. And it's the same deal here. The ring, I don't want it to be an active element, so let's just close this now and see what this looks like. And you can see as the ring pulses, I can mouse into it and it's not affecting the hotspot. The hotspot now only changed black as and when I hover into it. Okay, so that's that fixed. Right, okay. The other thing I want to look at with the hotspot is I'm looking to turn it into a component with options. All right, and how we're going to do this is if we look at how the hotspot works, it has a timer and the timer is counting away. All right, so it's set to 0.25 of a second, because don't forget, as I said, with the timer it's toggling, and the timer can have 2 actions to it. It can have an activate and deactivate. So if again, with it set to 0.25 or a quarter of a second, what's happening is it's spending quarter of a second to activate, quarter of a second to deactivate, another quarter of a second back to activate. So it's taking like half a second to go from activate to activate. All right, so that's why I've set this so low. Now, what I want to do is create or externalize this. So when you open the skin, or rather when you open the HTML5 output and add the skin, you'll have a config button and you can configure the speed of the pulsing. And the way we're going to do that is, if I look at the timer, I'm going, so we look at the timer and I can give the timer an action of config loaded, all right, and set variable value, all right, and the variable I haven't set yet, but that is where it's going to take its time from. At the moment, it is set, let's close this, the timer is set at 0.25. So what I'm going to do is select skin, and I'm going to add a variable, and I'm going to call this var underscore hs for hotspot underscore, and we'll just put speed. All right, and I'm going to make this a text variable. Again, the reason why I'm doing this is a numbered variable, all right, without going into too much detail, is a number that can only be a whole number. Its techie term is like integer, but basically it's a whole number, so it's a 0, 1, 2. It can't be points of. So I can't use a numbered variable for 0.25. It won't accept that. It has to be a whole number. So I'm now using this as a text variable, and I'm going to put in this text variable the speed that I want, which is going to be 0.25. all right, so that's the speed I want, and I'm going to externalize this. That's what, or not externalize, expose. This is what it means. If I drag this over, you can see the text more. It says expose, and I'm just going to call this hotspot speed. All right, so that's its name. When we go to the external or the skin configuration button, you'll see hotspot speed, and you'll be able to type in some numbers. Okay, so that's the speed. Now if we go back to the timer and look at the config loaded, the value is going to be the variable. All right, so the way that we typed up the variable is going to be dollar open bracket asterisk, because it's a variable, and we said what is it, var underscore hs underscore speed close bracket. All right, so follow me on this. So when we first open the project, the config loaded is going to set the, actually that was wrong, set the, no, it was right, sorry, set the value. Let's put that back in, sorry. Yeah, set the value to the timer, so it's dollar open bracket star asterisk what we do, var underscore hs underscore speed. Right, so we're going to set that, and that needs to go to the timer, which is itself, so I can leave itself. Okay, as a helper, I'm going to add my text box. All right, and let's just get rid of the text that's already in there and go to the variable, and we should have the hs file speed there, and this should show me the speed that's going to be set to the timer, which is 0.25. There it is. So that's its pulse speed. All right, okay, that's pretty cool. Because we exposed the variable, we've now got our skin configuration button active. When I click it, we can see hotspot speed. I can actually take this down to about 0.15. I don't want to go any faster than that, because the hotspot itself, the way that the rings transition or move, and the way that the thing pulses, I set a transition time of ½ second. So if I go too quickly, you'll start to see things happen. So here we're now moving slightly quicker, because we're now setting the speed at 0.15. All right, so from an external point of view, so we just add the, or say an external point of view, that's probably one thing, wrong thing to say. Once I've added the skin, I've now got the ability to just use the skin configuration button and change the settings of that speed of the timer. And the way we've done that is using the variable. All right, now the other thing with the timer is, if you remember, we used a activate set variable value module or modulo action, and basically this is, as I said to you, don't worry about that, it just means loop. All right, so on 4 it'll go back to 0, so it will go 0 1 2 3, rather than going to 4 goes back to 0. So this is our loop. So what we can do is actually add a number in here, or we can add a placeholder to another variable. All right, so with that said, let's do that. Let's go back to the skin. So you click the skin canvas, get back to the variables, and I'm going to add a variable for hotspot. Let's do that again. For hotspot, and I'm going to call this duration. All right, and it's a number, and I've got my default set of 4, so I'm going to put that in there. I'm going to select to expose the variable, and I'm going to call this let's get my mouse out of the way. Right, hotspot space duration. All right, so that's that. Right, okay, so that's my variable. So the hotspot is going to, or rather the placeholder for this then, is going to be var underscore hs underscore duration. All right, so I'm going to copy that. All right, and if we go back to the timer, go back to the timer's action. All right, and I'm going to go into expert mode, and we're going to type in that placeholder for the variable, which is dollar open bracket asterisk. Oh, let's do that again. Open bracket asterisk. Now I did copy it rather than having to type it all out again, so I copied it directly from the variable list, and then we're going to close it. All right. Now I know this all looks very techy, but the thing just got to take on board is the placeholders. I've said it several times. I'll keep saying it until it's absolutely drilled in, that a placeholder to a variable is basically the variable name with an asterisk in front of it in between the two brackets. All right, so that's that. So let's click OK. I'm going to add another text box helper. I'll stick it under that one. And this time around, I'm going to delete that text, and we're going to insert variable, and this is the duration. All right, so let's just close and save this and see what that says. It says it's 4, and it's pulsing away. All right, if we have a look at the skin configuration button, it says it's 4. All right, so basically if I change this to say 9, what we should affect, he says, is how long. You see it's slowed down. We've slowed the pulse down. All right, now what we can do, because we can, is add another text box. All right, one of my helpers. I'm going to highlight the text, delete it. Now I know from last week that the var hs is the variable that the timer updates to count. All right, so what this will do is help debug what's going on. So here you can see it's running really quickly. We're getting to, as I say, it doesn't count to 9. It gets on 9, it'll go back to 0. But you can see the timer's now running at 0.15 seconds, and it's counting quite long. It's going up to, as I say, 9. Now that's going a little bit too potty, to be fair. So let's take that back to its standard settings, so which was 0.25 and at 4. All right, and that takes us back to where it was to start with. Okay, so that's now our hotspot. So you can now see that we've configured this hotspot. So from without having to go into the skin editor, we can adjust how it looks and the speed of it and the duration between the pulses. All right, now I did say we want to turn this into a component. All right, now there's a gotcha on this, and I'm not going to correct the gotcha until we get to it. All right, but basically how you would turn this into a component is you select the elements that you want. So let's just get rid of all of these helpers. I don't need these now. These are just purely actually no, I'll tell a lie, I will leave them there because I'm going to save this skin and you guys can see them. So let's save them. Change my mind. It's my webinar, I can do whatever I want. I'm changing my mind. Right, okay, so I'm going to select the 2 elements that I want to use as the component. Now, obviously the hotspot needs the timer, so I need the timer and I need the hotspot itself, okay, the point hotspot, the ht_node. I can select those two, right button click, create component from selection. It's going to be a new component, so let's call it, have I already saved it? Let me have a look. No, I haven't. Good. Right, so it's going to be a new component, and we're just going to call this animated point hotspot. All right, so animated point hotspot. Click OK. There it is. You can just do a screenshot and just dump it in here to update that. I might do that in a second, or once we've done it, just to tidy it all up and have it as a good component. But what I want to show you is the problem that we're going to get. And the problem is, if I now choose a new skin, all right, open it up, go to the components toolbox, animated hotspot, double click to add it. Is it going to work? No. And the reason why it's not going to work, let's just go to desktop and just type in skin. Oh, actually, no, I'll put it in the, so let's just do test skin, put it in there, and shove it. There you go. It does its logic block stuff of mouse over, but it's not working. Why isn't it working? Right, now this is, as I say, this is one of, I wouldn't say a gotcha, but it's logical. If we click in the skin canvas, you'll see the only variable is the var HS. And the reason being is this is the only variable being used within these elements, okay? Because it's the timer is updating that variable var HS. So it needs to be either part of a logic block or part of an action or part of any of the elements before it's remembered. All right. So just doing what we did to turn it into a component has not worked. So what we need to do then is, if we go back to the skin, so this is part 2, which we were working on, what I need to do is say, right, I'm going to collapse all of these elements. I'll just do a keyboard shortcut to save that, because basically if I don't save it, if I don't physically change anything in here, when I close the skin it won't auto save. It'll only auto save if I physically change something. But if I change like the parentage and what part of the tree I can see, next time I open it, it will go back to the way it was. So that's why I closed it up and saved it. All right. Now, what I need to do then is that these variables, like the var speed and var duration, I need to make these a part of at least one of these components. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the timer. All right. Now the timer is really good because it's an invisible component. All right, or component. It's an invisible element. So I'm just going to add these to this. So I'm going to say variable var speed, variable var duration. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what these do, because it's not going to affect the visibility of something that you can't see to start with. All right. So, but they are now a part of one of these elements. It's referencing it. I've got an element that's referencing this variable. Therefore, this element requires this variable. And again, when I save this as a component, these will get saved. So let's just prove that point. If I now select these two, right button click, create component from selection. This time round I'm just going to replace it because I've already done it once, so I can select it from my list, click OK, and there it is. Now, as I said before, we could update all this. You can give it some information, you can do some tags or whatever, or literally just I will actually do this because it's quite fun. Let's just save this. Let's open up the hang on. Let's do the output. So there it is. Now what I'm going to do, most web browsers can do this, is quite funky. You can use the keyboard shortcut to zoom your browser. You can see view and you can zoom it. Under zoom you've got some keys there. Now of course with a panorama you can do this and zoom in, all right, but you're just zooming in the elements. You're not actually zooming in the panorama. But what this is good for is for taking screenshots. So I'm going to I've done the keyboard shortcut to be able to select a portion of the screen, and then on the right point I'm going to release the button, and boom, I'm going to create a screenshot. All right, I'm now going to do the keyboard shortcut to return the skin back to its normal size. All right, so I've now done this. Let's go back to the skin. Let's go back to the components toolbox. Let's go back. Oh, where is it? I've lost everything. Where is it gone? It's there. Right, that's what I want. So let's go back to the component, select it. I can now drag in this, and there we've got a nice little image for my component, and you obviously can give it a nice name. But anyway, so that's creating the component. Let's close this, close the skin. Let's go back to Panel 2 VR. Boom. Let's go back to my test skin. Open it up. Let's just delete everything in the test skin. Let's delete that variable. So this would be like a new skin. So now when I go to the components toolbox, double click to add my component. When I select it, you'll see it now has all of the variables necessary for this to function. If I close, save, and create the output, boom, there is our animated point hotspot now as a component. So there you go. That's as far as I'm going to take it this week. I hope you've enjoyed what I've just done, going a bit more into the variables and the components. This is and the reason why I wanted to set up and make clear the difference between a normal placeholder and a variable placeholder and numbers and text variables is because this is all gearing us up for next week, which is going to be, how to put some puzzles in a panorama to, gamify, if you like. So you've got to, answer a few questions. Once done, hotspot will then show. You can then go into the next pano and so on. So that's going to be next week's how to, if you like, gamify a panorama. But for this week, I think that's me, and thank you very much. Karen, do we have any questions?
Hi. First of all, thank you for that. I learned a few tricks today.
Cool.
Yeah. So we have a few questions, and the first one is from Karsten, and he has a good question. What does expose mean when you start a new variable?
Right. Okay. Basically, if we click on the skin configuration button, you'll see that the two variables, well, let's go back into the skin. That'd be the easiest thing to do. So if you look here, I've got the variable that changed the speed and the variable that changed the duration. Now they've got fixed values. But if I wanted to when I select to expose these, I can give it a description, and they now appear in this button. If you've got exposed variables, this skin configuration button becomes active. So now these are the values that are actually sitting in that variable, and I can change it. When I change them here and click OK, I'm physically changing the variable values in the skin. So with regards to the speed, it's set at 0.25. If I was to change that to say 0.15, when the project opens, the config loaded action will load 0.15 to the timer, and then the timer will then speed up to 0.15. So when we select expose, what we're actually doing is saying you can affect the variable value from the skin configuration button. Okay, next.
Cool. Yeah. Let's see. Actually, I just wanted to bring up a point. If you use one of the built-in skins and you go to the edit configuration button there, you'll see a ton of ways to show it. Let's show it up.
Let's do it. Let's do the simplex. And here what we can do is we've exposed colors, so you can actually physically go and change the colors of buttons. You can hide and show different elements. As a default, the show information button, so the user data is hidden, but you could click that and that adds a button to the skin. The skins have been built in such a fashion that that when you first open, there is a player state change action, and it looks at all of this and it says, right, well, that's not selected. I won't bother selecting that, so I'll move that button over a little bit to make, to cover up the gap. Or if this button has been made or selected, we'll put that button in the skin and we'll just shift over the other buttons a little bit just to make space for that. And that's basically, in a nutshell, what we're doing. So yeah, that's the skins.
Right, and it's also why it's hard to edit those built-in skins directly, because there's so much going on.
Absolutely, absolutely. This is why when you do open one of these up, it says, please use the skin configuration button. All right, because so that's that's why it's there. Right. Now, all of these, by the way, all of these skins, like the Simplex and the Silhouette V6, they're all built using the skin editor. These skins that come with Pano 2 VR, once you've get yourself familiar with the skin editor, you can build these skins yourselves. Now, one of the things I'd love to promote, and one of the reasons why I wanted to show how you could turn an element into a component is, want people to contribute. If people want to, be able to build nice skins, be able to build nice components, they want to stick them on their web shop, in their own web shops and start selling them, then love for you guys to do it. It isn't difficult. There's a lot of people coming to Pano 2 VR that are, in quotation marks, photographers. They don't want to spend time on this. It's easier for them to go and buy a skin from one of you guys, whack it in their project, and they're away. They're happy, their customers happy, everyone's happy. So yeah, it's but the important thing is that as good as these are, it was like 95.99, actually it's 99.9999 recurring percent me, 0.000 recurring $1. All right, but yeah. And I'm sure I'm going to get sat on next time I go to Austria. But anyway, but these are all built in the skin editor. Nothing fancy. No one's gone down into JavaScript or fancy code or anything. I put these skins together. Well, I say we put these skins together because obviously I have to learn. Thomas comes up with the code. He's the owner, he's the builder, and him and Christoph come up with the code. They build these wacky things. I then have to sit down and learn them. But it's all using the software. I'm not a JavaScript monkey. I do not know JavaScript that well. I don't know coding that well. Everything I do and all the help I provide is using our interface. So, everything you see here is done within the application. Right. I shall get off my soapbox now and stop waving my Gnome flag. Right, okay.
Yeah. All right, let's move on. So Marcelo, he has also a nice question where he says, how can he have a semi-transparent start screen that hides the interface elements from the tour until it loads completely? And then you have it fade out, in a nice transition. So, you see the screen up until everything is loaded. Mm-hmm. And then it fades out really nice. Is this something we can cover today, or?
No, it's well, basically, you can use a variable to hide all of the elements. All right, so you could have like all of your elements on the skin. Fastest way to hide a bunch of elements is if they can be put into a single container. You hide the container; it hides all the child elements of that container. So if you had in your head, right, okay, I've got a variable that's hiding everything on the screen, and you've got let's put this rectangle in here. We can make the rectangle, let's just really do this quickly there, and we can set that to percentage and make that rectangle 100% by 100%. We can make it black, and we can make it, 150. So that's your translucent background. All right, what we can say is we can have an action that's loaded. So images ready, or hang on, config loaded, images ready. When images are ready, we could set a variable value, and because obviously we've not done it, but we could have had the variable that, I don't know, var start as an example. When it's false, the rectangle is shown and all the other elements are hidden. But when all the images become ready, so everything's loaded, this could change to true, which would then hide this rectangle and then show all the other elements. Of course, what we would do is, as we change a variable on the rectangle, we could change the variables, the rectangle's alpha. So we'd say when that variable becomes true, alpha out to 0, using a time duration of, say, half a second, which would then fade it out over half a second. And then you could set all the other elements of your skin to fade in within half a second. So yes, totally doable. I think my favourite saying, the answer is yes, what do you want to do? All right, so that's where we go with that.
That's true. Yeah. Okay, so next question we've got from Andre. And so he's asking if you can show the following, where he has, for example, 5 icons. Mm-hmm. And all of them have a common background. And it says in different tours there'll be a different number of icons. How do you display the settings of the displayed icons and the background size in the output of the project? I think I'm a little I'm a little confused. Maybe Andre, you can clarify. Do you mean in different panoramas or in separate projects, like different?
I'm more confused with the backgrounds. If you've got common backgrounds, are we saying that we've got similar buttons, or you're saying backgrounds? I don't get that bit. Perhaps this is rather than try and spend time to try and decipher this, which I'm sure is just easy. I'm just brain's dead at the moment. Just email into support, and perhaps we can cover it in another webinar. I tend to like to backtrack a little bit on things that were asked. If we can get it in, obviously this is only part 2. Part 3 is tomorrow. Best not be tomorrow. Next week. Then perhaps if we can answer that one and get clarification, then I can bring it up so everyone can hear the answer to that next week. So that'd be the best way to do that.
Michael has a question too, which I think maybe this makes more sense to you. How do you change auto rotation in different nodes? What kind of auto rotation? Do you mean turning it on and off, or do you want to turn to the left or to the right, or what's the? That's another.
Yeah, and that's okay. I mean, that's more of a tags thing.
Left and right. Okay, yeah, so you want to change.
Yeah, no, you can. We can do that. It's I'll have to think about that, but basically you could use a tag, and what you'd do is have a what you could do as an example, grab just a container, so it's an element that's got no mass. All right, so you can hide this anywhere you like. You could have on node change. Node changed. Let's do, if I can find it, auto rotate. So start will rotate, auto rotate. Frame rate, let's just do 0.4, so it's not going too quickly. Delay, speed, right. So your speed, if it's a positive number, it rotates one way, and if it's a negative number, it will rotate another way. Okay, so you have the same action in this container, so you'll have this action twice, okay, as an example. All right, so we just have one with and one without. Okay, and then what you can do is tag your panoramas, and then you can turn and say on a filter that if the tag equals, I don't know, let's just put left for that one, and then so tour tags equals right for that one, click OK. So basically what's going to happen is that when you do a node change, if it detects a tag on left, obviously only the action with the correct tag will fire off. So it will start the auto rotate, and you know, if you've got the positive or negative number, it will rotate one way or it will rotate the other way. That's probably going to be the easiest way to do it. So you just tag your panos in the project folder under the user data. You can add tags here. As I say, you can type in left for some and right for the others, and then when you go back to the skin and this container, you can then use the tags to trigger whichever action that you wish. So you put both the same action in there, but only one will fire depending on the tag. So yeah, that's that working.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah. Michael says, yeah, great, thanks. He's got it. So, and I think that's it for all of our questions. Let me just double check. Yep. We haven't heard back from Andre, but Andre, why don't you just write into support and we can get that figured out for you. And like Martin said, maybe we can show it in the next webinar.
Absolutely, or at least answer the question. So yeah.
At least answer the question. Yeah. So that's it from my end. So thanks.
Oh, actually, before you go, Karen, before you go, did we get any results from the poll thing?
Oh, we did. Did that just show up in? Like,
well, no. See, the thing is, well, as I'm looking at my webinar browser, which is on a different screen, my whole browser disappeared, and all I've got now is this thing that says, "Do you like pointer mouse highlighter?" And I'm like, "Oh no, you've just covered everything. All my information for the webinar's now gone." And I've got this thing sitting here. So,
but now we know how it works.
Yeah, now we know how it works. So yeah, so it's interesting to you know, after it's given me the willy, so to speak, what's the result?
Yeah. So the result is an overwhelming majority like the helper green circle thing.
Oh, yeah. Bugger. Don't like you lot then. All right, we keep it. Cool. All right. Yeah. All right. Well, okay. Well, I'm done. I'm done.
And one person did say that while they like it, I think it was Michael who said this, they like it, but that he also had no problem following you without the pointer helper thing. So, yeah. But I think, yeah, most people are finding it helpful.
Awesome. Right. Okay. Great. Well, as said, until next week, thanks everybody for joining. Yeah, that's great. And yeah, until part 3.
Okay. Until part 3.
All right. See you later, everyone. Bye.
Bye.